Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about the adult education. After this lecture, you will be able to define the term adult education, describing the meaning, purpose, and concept of adult education, state the objectives of adult education, explain the need for adult education, and identifying the characteristics of an adult learner and adult education. The education of adults is a multifaceted, complex process which encompasses, that is, include many subject and interest areas. It is broad and varied as those it serves. It encompasses adult basic education, that is, teaching basic learning and survival skills to the undereducated. Continuing education efforts for personal and professional growth and enrichment activities for the highly educated. It is designed for personal skills development, for enhanced career opportunities, or for enjoyment. It can involve a very short duration of time for or several years of effort. Finally, it serves diverse of students and includes a varied population of adult teachers. Hello friends, have you ever heard about the adult education? If yes, then write in your notebook about adult education. Check your answer after reading the this content. First one, discuss about the meaning and purpose of adult education. Adult education is a process where adults who are no longer in school or do not attend school on a regular or full time basis or school dropouts undertake sequential or chronological and organized educational activities on various subjects such as health, family welfare, agriculture, and animal husbandry, etc. This is intended to bringing about changes in knowledge, attitude, and skills for the purpose of identifying and solving personal and community problems. Adult education holds all forms of educative experience needed by men and women according to their varying interests and requirements at their different levels of comprehension and ability, and in their changing roles and responsibility throughout life. Adult education plays an indirect but significant role in the educational as well as economic development of a nation. It can be remarked that without adult education and adult literacy, it is not possible to have a range and speed of economic and social development that makes it worthwhile in terms of values and welfare, because it is not possible to impart all types of education to various categories of learners. Non classroom education of adult learners has immense importance, particularly for a developing society and a society with low levels of literacy, high literacy, and low development. Dear friends, after understanding the meaning and purpose of adult education, let us now look at some definitions cited by some authors and organizations. According to Lindemann 1961, adult education, more accurately defined, begins where vocational education leaves off. Adult education offers some who are not privileged a large chance to learn. Some feel a need for training in basic skills of learning, so they enroll for learning. reading, writing, and arithmetic. If we examine this definition, we will find the following essential elements that characterize it. It is post vocational education, it is education for the deprived classes, and it is training in basic skills of learning, that is literacy. The Exeter Conference 1969 defines it as the process whereby a person who no longer attends school on a regular basis undertakes sequential and organized activities within a conscious intentions of bringing about changing the information, knowledge, understanding, skills, appreciations, and attitudes for the purpose of identifying and solving personal or community problems. In this definition, we can observe that there are two elements that characterize it. First one is part-time or full-time process, and second one is sequential and organized activities. According to Ready 2000, adult education is part-time or full-time education for men and women of all ages, either organized by themselves or provided by schools, learning centers, or other agencies which enable them to improve their general or professional knowledge, skills, and abilities by either continuing their education or resuming their initial or incomplete education of previous year. Have you ever thought about the purpose and aims of adult education? Objectives of adult education. The goals of adult education are to increase the quality of life of an individual and enable him or her to realize his or her potential for self realization, to raise the standard of living of the families, communities, societies, and nation, to promote peace and communal harmony in the multicultural global village, and to enhance the pace of development and welfare of the individual nations and the international community as whole. There are three major objectives of adult education as explained are: first one is imparting literacy of diverse types. This includes basic literacy, scientific literacy, economic literacy, technological literacy, legal literacy, computer literacy, and so on. You will learn more about types of literacy at higher levels of your educational pursuits. Second one is generating awareness on various matter or subjects. These include awareness about oneself, community, society, and the nation, about social, economic, political, cultural, environmental, developmental, health, hygiene, etc. About peace, welfare, and harmonious growth and development of the individual, family, community, nation, and the world, amongst other things. Promoting functionality. This includes application of individuals, collective, community, corporate, national and international knowledge, skills, attitudes, practices, resources, etc., for addressing the felt needs, for solving the problems, for promoting larger public participation in various activities, and for bringing out social, economic, cultural, political transmission for raising general level or standard of living of the individual, community, nation, and the world. Let us see what the concept of adult education means. Concept of adult education in India. Concept of adult education is concerned with the education of adults. The nation of who is an adult vary from those past school age through grown-ups to mature individuals. Precise identification of an adult tend to fall into the categories of age, psychological and social role. Concept of adult education is a a relationship between an education agent and learners, in which the agent selects, arranges, and continuously direct a sequence of progressive tasks that provide systematic experience to achieve learning from those whose participation in such activities is subsidiary, that is supplementary, and supplemented to a primary productive role in society. Thus, only those systematically planned experiences intended to result in learning, and only that learning which occurs in purposefully constructed instructional setting under the continuous direction of an external educational agent fall within the scope of adult education. Most people make the mistake of looking at the concept of adult education from a narrow perspective. To them, it is nothing but a literacy program that is undertaken to eradicate illiteracy among adult education in a country. Adult education as a discipline has come to a long way. It is no longer restricted to literacy alone. In a wider connotation, adult education refers to any form of learning process that engages mature men and women beyond the confines of a traditional learning environment. Also, termed as continuing education, it includes everything from learning the three basic R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, to learning for personal accomplishment and goes to the extent of enabling a person to attain a high degree. In order to have a better understanding of adult education, it becomes necessary for us to trace its beginning and know how it has evolved through the years. According to Malcolm Knowles, who is also called the father of adult education, pioneered the field of adult education in the US in the 20th century. Adult education theory evolves by the different concepts as follows. First one is fundamental education. Fundamental education is that kind of minimum and general education which aims to help children and adults who do not have the advantages of formal education to understand the problem of their immediate environment and their rights and duties as citizens and individuals, and to participate more effectively in the economic and social progress of their community. It is fundamental in the sense that it gives the minimum knowledge and skills which are an essential condition for attaining an adequate standard of living. Out of school education. The formula out of school education is another of the expressions that UNESCO testifies to in establishing a definition for adult education. At first, the formula for of out of school education was affected by the supposition that adult education is adult education or for adults instead of for participants in educational process. Adult education now has some qualities which surpass that out of school education. Lifelong education. Lifelong education is a process aimed at ineffective learning throughout life that comprises all ages, all levels of teaching, all forms of education, and all educational policies. It approaches all dimensions of women's life, all branches of knowledge, and all practical skills. It tries to favor that they participate in the formation of it and in the spirit of social progress, responding to the demands of development and the needs of the society, forming in continual interdisciplinary fashion and accordance with the economic, cultural, and social development of the community. According to Dave, 1976, regards lifelong learning education as a process of accomplishing personal social, and professional development throughout lifespan of individuals in order to enhance the quality of life both individuals and their collectives. It includes formal and non-formal and informal patterns of learning throughout the life cycle of an individual for the conscious and continuous enhancement of the quality of life of his own and that of his society. Continuous education. According to Liggett, 1982, continuous education seems to have reference to some kind of retraining when needed. For example, in a new job, it certainly presupposes that some education has gone before presumable initial education, which is first to be completed. According to this definition, it is clear that continuing education starts after certain level of schooling, while lifelong education is broader as it subsumes continuing education. Continuing education includes those learning opportunities that are taken up after the completion of initial education. Dear friends, we have already discussed the objectives, definition, and characteristics of adult education. Now, we have to discuss about we thought who could be the clientele of adult education. Adult education clientele, there are certain target groups which do not fit into the formal education system due to the different circumstances like poverty, disability, literacy, etc. Therefore, they become the clientele of adult education. Clientele are as follows: unemployed youth. Unemployment is a major problem in many countries, especially in India. The rate of unemployment is almost same in both rural and urban areas. Urban areas have more number of educated unemployed, and in the rural areas, laborers and agriculturalists are unemployed for almost 6 months in a year. India has 240 universities managing over 5,000 colleges of various courses, thus bringing out millions of graduates every year. Almost 50 to 60% of the graduates are still searching for jobs after their graduation. Due to lack of employability, opportunities, poor communication skills, less subject knowledge, and entrepreneurship qualities. Therefore, help such students could be helped by adult education to improve their employability skills. Out of scheme, out of school children. The 86th Constitutional Amendments Act 2002 makes education a fundamental right for children in the age group of 6 to 14 years, starting that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years in such manner as the state may by law determine. It is argued that in developing countries with inadequate educational infrastructure, poverty, inequality, social norms, credit land labor, market imperfections, high fertility, and unpredictable employment scenario, children drop out of schools at an early age. Certain schools are too far, timings of formal schools are rigid, and all these factors interplay to persuade children to leave school. There has been an impressive reduction in the number of out-of-school children in the past few years. In 2001, there were 58.021 million out-of-school children. This number reduced to 13.42 million in 2005. The problems regarding education of these out of school children vary across the nation due to different causes, factors, and diverse obstacles to overcome. Adult education can thus help to overcome their problems. People with disability. A recent study by the World Bank 2007, for example, noted that children with disability are 5 times more likely to be out of school than children belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Based on NSS data, the World Bank 2007 64 report categorically states that it is very clear that both educational attainments of all PWD and current attendance in CWD are very poor and far below national averages. Data suggests that people with disabilities have much lower educational attainment rates, with 52% illiteracy against 35% average for the general population. Adult education caters to them according to their priorities and needs. Women and girls. In many developing and underdeveloped countries, education of women and girls poses a serious problem. At the primary level, more dropouts are girls because of superstitions, a belief in supernatural influences, and the belief that girls need more education as boys in a discriminatory attitude. Both factors all add to the seriousness of the problems. In India, it is believed that the place of a woman is at home, and even if they work outside in the fields, in factories or in offices, their work is lowly paid. Though the attitude is changing of late, it has not eradicated the problem of illiteracy, which is greater among girls and women when compared to boys and men. So, this is another area which falls within the scope of adult education. Only adult education systems can meet these challenges. Retired citizens. Education empowers an individual to think rationally and logically. Literacy has been found to be most important determinant of various demographic decisions of individuals. Among elderly persons, there is a huge gap between male and female literacy as well as in rural and urban parts of the country. In 2007 or 8, only 50% of elderly men and 20% of women aged 60 years or more literate through formal schooling. In rural areas, the proportion was further lower at 42% among men and 12% among elderly women. However, there is no denying of the fact that literacy levels among elderly males and females have improved over time in both rural and urban areas. Dear friends, have you ever thought that then why we need to adult education when we have formal system of education? Adult need of adult education in India brings a new hope for the illiterate masses who fail to get education during their school years. Though a well-defined program of adult education, the illiterate adult can hope to take part in the day-to-day activities of their country. As a National Adult Education Program is the first nationwide attempt at the eradication of illiteracy made through the National Adult Education Program launched on October 2nd, 1978. It was a massive program which aimed at education 100 million non-literate adults in the age group of 15 to 35 years within a time frame of 5 years. Adult education needed to widen intellectual horizon of partially illiterate adults. The aim of adult education to see that every person in the country know at least the 3 R's reading, writing, and arithmetic. Such knowledge is absolutely necessary for every person living in democratic country. Adult education is needed to make adult life happy, to satisfy the recreational needs of rural adults, to supplement it to the compulsory primary education, to provide continuing education. education does not end with schooling. It is a lifelong process. After defining of adult education, let us see the characteristics of adult learners. Adults generally desire to take more control over their learning than youth. Adults tends to be self-directed in their lives. All the responsibility with jobs, families, and other organizations can remove a degree of their freedom to act. Adulthood brings an increasing sense of the need to take responsibility for our lives, and adults strongly resent it when others take away their rights to choose. This fact is clearly seen in educational efforts among adults. Second one is adults draw upon their experiences as a resource in their learning efforts more than youth. The adult's experience is a key resource in any learning effort. Adults have a great reservoir of life experiences simply because they have lived longer and seen and done more. This is a critical distinction between adults and traditional learners. Consciously or unconsciously, adults tend to link any new learning to their prior learning, a body of knowledge that is rooted in their life experiences. They evaluate the validity of new ideas and concepts in light of how the ideas or concepts fits their experience. Adults tend to be more motivated in learning situations than youth. Higher motivation is linked to the fact that most adult learning is voluntary. Adults are making personal choices to attend schooling, even when such schooling is tied to professional development or job skills. Whenever an individual is able to choose to learn, he or she is much more motivated to learn. Adults are more pragmatic in learn than youth. Adults are particularly motivated to know and learn information that seems immediately applicable to their situation and needs. They tend to be frustrated with theory that needs to be stored away from for future use or learning for the sake of learning. In contrast to youth, the learner role is secondary for adults. For most adults, the student role is a minor and a secondary role. This is in a sharp contrast of traditional age learners for whom the learner role is both their primary social role and the main basis for their self identity. Adults fulfill multiple roles, and these multiple roles inevitably create conflicting, contradictory, and competing demands on the adult learners. Multiple roles will cause most adults to have far less time and energy to read, study, and or learn. Adults must feed their learning into life's margin. Adult roles take energies and time to fulfill. Everyone faces the reality limits on their energies and time. An important principle to understand is that learning takes time and energy. If an adult is going to undertake a learning activity, he or she must realistically evaluate his or her life and actually see that there is a room for the added demands of learning. Adult learners must learn to carve out some margin in their lives to allow learning to occur a process of priority setting. Many adults lack confidence in their learning. Many adults have somewhat negative learning experiences in their traditional schooling. For a variety of reasons, they feel inadequate when it comes to learning through formal educational programs. Still, other adults who may have done well in their earlier schooling lack confidence for further schooling efforts due to what they perceive as rusty study skills, poor reading skills, test anxiety, or other such learning barriers. Adults are more resistant to change than youth. Learning often involves changes in our attitudes or actions. Adults tends to be somewhat resistant, that is unwilling to changes because life itself teaches changes that is not always for the better and that many outcomes of changes are often unpredictable. Youth tend to be more idealistic and are often open to change just for the sake of change. Adults are more diverse than youth. Adults vary from each other as learners in terms of age and experiences, much more than traditional age learners. Such differences can be used as a powerful resources for adult learning. Through collaboration in small groups, adults can benefit from their variety of experiences. Dialogues with other adults enables adult learners to perceive more nuances of application and possible problems with new concepts than could ever be gained from private reflections. Adults must compensate for aging in learning. Aging brings with it number of physical complications that can impact on adult learner efforts. The percentage of such complications increase with age. As we will see later, such complications are not really due to intelligence. Although the speed of learning tends to decrease with age, depth of learning tends to increase. In other words, adults tend to learn rapidly with age, but what they learn is learned at a deeper and more integrative level. As adults age, vision and hearing can also create barriers in educational programs. As adult educators, we must pay much more attention to sound and lighting when dealing with adult learners. Let us move further to understand the characteristics of adult education. Adult education is very dynamic, self motivated in its nature. Its role, purpose, and function will change with changing situations and conditions of adults. Accordingly, its nature and character also undergo changes. Broadly, the nature and characteristics features of adult education are as follows. Adult education is community based and assumes great significance in particular context, and it need not be equally relevant to other communities in similar contexts. The nature, objective, and types of adult education required for adults could vary from culture to culture. Adult education takes into account the dominant needs and prevalent problems of communities and aims at addressing them in effective ways. It involves adults at different levels and stages of planning, implementation, and evaluation of adult education activities meant for their progress, development, and welfare. In many respects, adult education incorporates elements of flexibility so that the adults would feel at home, comfortable to acquire education that has relevance to their living, working, and development. Adult education is very dynamic and primarily aimed at bringing in social, economic, political, and cultural transformation of the adults, their society, and nation. It helps to enhance the level of adults' awareness and prompts them to action for change. It helps in emancipating or liberating that is beneficial adults from their current problems and situations. It is basically conceived and offered taking into account the experience of adults. It promotes a rational and informed decision with a view to promote the welfare and development, social, economic, political, and cultural of individuals, groups, society, and nation. It is systematically organized process using diverse method and techniques of teaching and learning with an inbuilt element or component of flexibility or promotion of more learner-centered educational activities. It is very effective in building the network of adults, their groups, activities, and association in the particular context and situation in which the adult life, earn, and learn. It aims at enhancing the adults to use all their networks, personal, social, professional, political, etc., for raising their quality of life and standard of living. Adult education is an effective tool for empowerment of adults. Now, we are going to discuss about the problems faced in adult education. Though we are far behind in providing adult education to our population, some of the facts which affects its outcomes are discussed here in this session. Adult education is need-based education. The basic needs of the people are food, shelter, and clothing. The basic needs do not include education. It becomes a secondary need for a poor man. Though the developed countries have reached its literacy level up to 99%, still literacy rate of India is 74%, according to provisional data of the 2011 census. Therefore, this could lead to major problem in adult education. There are many problems faced in adult education like adult education has problems if the need does not exist in the individual. The individual, the instructor, and the community are actively involved in the process. If any of them lacks motivation, these programs of adult education may fail. Adult education can fail at any stage if people change their needs or even shift their priorities. There can also be faulty planning, improper utilization of resources, including human resources, behind the failure of adult education program. Another contributory factors for the failure of adult education can be the sponsoring agencies. Dear friends, when we are planning or implementing any adult education program, there are some problems which are likely to be faced. Let us see what are they. Adult education attempts to improve the quality of life of the learner, but there are many problems beyond its scope. The learner often face conditions which compel to force someone to do something, them to drop out of the adult education stream. Some of them are discussed in this session. First one is economic related problem. Education and the job pattern of the individual may not coincide if two things happen at the same time. If the individual has to make a choice, he chooses the job and drops out of the education. Even in the adult education, timings are made convenient as the individual may get physically and mentally tired from the job. This influences the motivation of learners in a negative way. The poor, the not so poor, and at times even the well to do may find the attraction of monetary gain too tempting to resist. An overtime allowance, that is, an amount of money that you are given regularly for or for a special purpose, or a supplementary job which gives additional income may divert the individual from the education. Adult education target group are mostly drawn from youth and adults who are wage earners and supporters of their families. The learners do not consider literacy and general self-development programs as necessary as they do not generate immediate financial gains. Second one is ignorance and poverty related problem. Persons who suffer from ignorance and poverty, even if they join adult education courses, by compulsion are under pressure and they soon drop out. Also, ignorance deprives them of the benefits of the education. Migration related problem. Learners, mostly of lower socio-economic status, migrate in search of jobs or are less stable in their occupation. They move in search of a stable job while working there, change their residence. In fact, their life are disrupted. That is to prevent something from the continuing it. That they do not have any time for adult education program. They need to put in more time in learning, which again is in conflict with their migrating life. Fourth one is health related problems. The poor, who form the majority of adult learners, suffer most from illness and ailments, including the evil of too many children, which affects the health of the mother and also the care of the children. Poor housing, unhygienic toilet facilities, unsafe drinking water, and an unhealthy environment make it still worse. At the slightest discomfort or ailment, that is, an illness that is not very serious, they drop out of adult education programs. Fifth one is gender related problem. Women and girls are major clientele for any adult education program. The superiority of men and the secondary status given to women keep many women and girls away from education. Men by and large do not approve of women going out to attend class to educate themselves by because housekeeping and child rearing will be neglected or will have to be shared. The customs, traditions, and superstitions add to the dropout rate. Indian women for long have accepted their place at home and play a subdued role. Sixth one is orientation related problem. The term orientation is used deliberately against preparation. This may be one of the reasons for errors on the part of instructors. If orientation on adult education is not given to the teacher, he or she is most likely to remain less resourceful, less imaginative, and less helpful. The failure of the program then could be due to the instructor's lack of instructional and psychological skills. The instructor may not be able to teach and guide or to sustain the interest of adult education learners. Seventh one is confidence related problem. If the teacher has a correct perceptions or opinions of his or her students, the teacher will have confidence in the student's progress and ability. A negative attitude will be contribute to the failure of the programs. If the teacher has a positive attitude towards his or her students, it will result in the success of the programs. And that one is approach related problem. Adult education programs are planned for voluntary learners, mostly adults and aged. And exceptions could be made for those learners who have come at the persuasions that is able to make other people believe something or do what you ask of others and are not personally keen to learn or when the learning activity is not what they say. Courses are self directed, result oriented, and not formal. It cannot be a routine drill. This is more necessary in the case of female learners. If topics suitable for the temperament that is likely to suddenly become upset, excited, or angry of learners are not selected. Then the programs can fail as learners may not become active participation. Attendance related problems. Absenteeism may be on the part of the learners and instructor as well. An irregular teacher can inhibit or at least dilute the desire of learning. Absenteeism raises doubt about the seriousness of the instructors. The learners come to regard adult education classes as a waste of time. And tenth one is motivation related problem. Motivation is an important factor. Lack of motivation leads to the failure of the program. If instructors and learners are not motivated to learn, the program is not going to be successful. Let us see now what adult educators have to say about existing adult education program. Thus, we can conclude adult education program that means key adult education refer to the practice of teaching and adult educating adults. It encompasses a wide range of learning activities designed to address the diverse needs and interests of adults, whether they seek to complete the basic education, gain new skills for employment, or pursue personal enrichment, pursue personal enrichment. That is basic literacy and numeracy, vocational technical training, higher education, personal development, and community educations. Basic literacy and numeracy programs aimed at adults who lack basic reading, writing, and arithmetic skills. This can include GED preparation and adult high school completion program. Vocational technical training provides job-specific skills that help adults enter, re-enter, or advance in the workforce. Thus, these include apprenticeships, certification programs, and technical courses. Higher education opportunity for adults to pursue post-secondary education, including associates, bachelor's, and advanced degrees. Many institutions offer part-time, evening, and online courses to accommodate working adults. Personal development courses and workshops that focus on hobbies, interests, and personal growth, such as art, music, cooking, and language classes. Community education, local initiatives that provide educational programs tailored out to the needs of the community, often focusing on social health and civic education. Objectives of the adult education are empowerment, social inclusion, economic development, active citizenship. Empowerment enable adults to gain the knowledge and skill necessary for personal and professional development. Economic development support empowerment. It enables adults to gain knowledge and skill necessary for personal and professional empowerment. And second one is economic development. It support economic growth by enhancing the skills of the workforce. Social inclusion. It promotes social inclusion by providing learning opportunity for marginalized and disadvantaged groups. And active citizenship. It fosters active and informed participation in civic life. Thus, we can conclude that adult education is a multidisciplinary process oriented to favor lifelong education for all, as well as efficient learning throughout life. It aims to provide the knowledge that improves professional qualification and to achieve civic, social, moral, and cultural attitudes and skills for performing responsibilities and for progress in all spheres of life. It attempts to prepare individual so that they may perform multiple functions participating in the life of their community. The various kinds of clientele a client deriving benefits of adult education would clearly indicate its scope, which is children outside school, the unemployed youth, people with disabilities, and women, girls, and elderly citizens. Adult education brings a new hope for the illiterate masses who fail to get education during their school years. Though a well defined program of adult education, the illiterate adults can hope to take part in the day to day activities of their country. Thank you, students.